What is going on, everybody? Welcome into a new episode of the J-Rock Show. It is a beautiful Friday here from the SimWorld TV studios. I'm your host, Jason J.K. Candell. It's great to be back. I hope you all enjoyed your Thanksgiving and will enjoy all of your holiday festivities upcoming. I have a great guest scheduled for you all later in this episode. But in the meantime, let's go across the country talking about some of the biggest storylines across SimWorld U. And there's no better place to start than what went down in the school down the road in Ann Arbor last night. Number 4 Georgia Tech faced Michigan, and Michigan did not go down without a fight. Quite literally, the Wolverines and Yellow Jackets got into a scuffle, 3-game suspension for both Malik Duffin and Lorenzo Phenom for throwing punches. What are we doing here? Where's the level of professionalism that I expect from SimWorld U athletes? You're representing your school, you're representing your team, you're representing your family. And that is an embarrassing representation of them. I understand that tensions will run high in basketball and things will happen, but there's no excuse for this. I'm surprised this suspension wasn't longer, because I would give them 4 or 5 games. Teach these kids a lesson, because there's no place for throwing punches and absolute scuffles in the game of basketball. I understand this isn't the 90s anymore. We're not playing this hip check era, the 90s era with Michael Jordan, but this is I'm totally okay with physicality, but we need to draw a line in the sand, and we absolutely jumped past that line with this incident today. Georgia Tech did win their 8th in a row, though. They're looking like one of the only teams in the country that can really give Duke a fight in the ACC. Dante Walker, Adam Mahmoud, who only had 1 point last night, Malik Duffin, who we did mention. This is a very good Georgia Tech team, and this is a good Michigan team. They're not ranked, but you have Lorenzo Phenom, you have Big Shot Bogg, you have Carlos Buffini, who's really been struggling as of late. This Wolverines team, in what is a very wide-open Big Ten, is a team that is not to be underestimated. Both the Wolverines and the Spartans of Michigan State are teams that I think will end up surprising people this season. But moving on, Duke, the Duke Blue Devils, number 1 in the country, faced Temple. And the Blue Devils made light work of the Owls. Deuce Turner, the latest commit for the Temple Owls, and they had no answer. Deuce Turner, I think, is a great pickup for this Temple squad. They really need a guy who can be that go-to scorer alongside AJ Frost and Angelo Roman. But this Duke team is no joke. They beat Temple on Tuesday. They beat Kansas State 86-56 last night. Not Temple. They beat Temple on Tuesday, if my memory serves me correctly. 5 players in double figures. Cooper Flagg is just continuing to dominate. This kid has future number 1 pick written all over him. We talk about it all the time. This kid is an absolute cyborg. I've never seen an 18-year-old kid accomplish what Cooper Flagg has accomplished at SimWorld U this quickly. Even Zion Williamson, a guy who was really good at Duke, didn't do things like this. But let's talk about the number 3 Kentucky Wildcats. They had a couple losses in recent weeks, improved their record to 13-2 against Oklahoma, who's now 5-11. Yikes. 34 for Glory Tate, 12 of 14 from the floor, 6 of 6 from deep as well. Glory Tate really put on a show in Lexington for those scouts. 21-8 for Jamison Johnson, 14 for Trey Trust, 5 in double figures for the Wildcats. Meanwhile, Suno Chapa, 10 of 14, 24 points for the Sooners. But Oklahoma, 5-11. They have Carson Cutbirth coming in to forge a really strong duo with Suno Chapa. But what's going on with this team? I get they're young, but they have talent. They have Jace Miguez. They have Suno Chapa. They have Floyd Henderson. They have Deontay Trice. This is a team I really, really like. I thought that they were going to do some damage in the Big 12 this year, but they finished last in the conference last year. They're going to be like a 12-18 team. There's not much more I see Oklahoma doing. I think that they can reach Hoops area, reach the tournament next year, but until Suno Chapa really comes into his own and develops that level of consistency, I don't think they're going anywhere. And let's talk about Miami. They lost to UConn in a very controversial game in a national championship rematch. Fareed Redmond, 22 points, 8 rebounds, game high 22 points. I saw my good friend at The Athletic, Zach Nichols, wrote all about what Fareed Redmond's journey is with his fishing hobbies and his father, and I thought that was a great piece for those of you who have not checked that out yet. But Fareed Redmond, Asad Drayton said it best in that this kid's a once in a lifetime player. He just lived for that big moment, and he really showed it against Miami. And he's playing with a really good chip on his shoulder and a really good killer instinct. And it's a story I'm really enjoying. But for Miami, another loss. They're fourth in a row, third in a row, 1-4 in their last 5. The hangover's continuing down in Coral Gables, and I don't really know what's going to happen with this team. However, there is another team that I would like to talk about. Let's talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. How is this team still ranked? I understand they're 22nd. They lost to San Diego State, who's 19. Even in ranked losses, this team has no business being ranked. I was a voter for the most recent SP rankings, and I did not have Tennessee in the top 25. Outside of Trey Turner, this team is bad. They don't have anything that impresses me. They don't have anything that excites me outside of Trey Turner. I think Henrik Vekic is frankly a bum. And I think that Rick Barnes is as good of a coach he is. This team is not built for the postseason this year. They'd be lucky to kind of make their way into March. They're a mediocre team led by a superstar. Trey Turner is going to reach the SWBA, and this team is going to sputter and crash and burn. And I honestly kind of can't wait to see it, because I don't think the rest of these voters, the rest of these media members can defend them, because I'm not. They're bad. Get them out the top 25. But for my final segment of this show, I mentioned I had a guest for you all. I spoke about him last week. Kai Killins decommitted from LSU and is now here joining me in the studio. Thank you, Kai. It's great to have you on. How are you doing today, my man?
Hey, Jason. Super glad to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
I'm really glad to hear that, my friend. You and I have spoken plenty times before. Let's dive right into some of these questions. Just kind of tell me, who were your biggest influences and idols growing up as a basketball fan and a basketball player, and who do you really look to model your own game after?
Well, my biggest influences when it comes to basketball are the big three. And if you already know who they are, then I'm about to tell you. I tend to model my game after Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron. All three of these GOATs have the qualities of what I believe elevates my game to a higher level in basketball. I revisit documentaries and highlight reels every week about them, but I prefer to see myself as a combination of all three when it comes to SimWorld Hoops. Not to take anything away from them, though.
Kai, the reason I wanted to have you on is, as much as I enjoy talking to you, I want to get into the nitty gritty. And I think I speak for many when we want to know why you backed out of your commitment to LSU. Can you kind of walk me through that decision to kind of renege on your commitment, and can you let me know what schools you've heard from since?
Eh, well, it's not that simple. For starters, I committed to LSU back in SimWorld Prep Season Two's offseason. I felt like at 16, when I had accumulated my awards for All World A Team and whatnot, that it was the peak of my high school career. I had already known that Coach Heach was going to recruit heavily for Gulf Coast Lockdown in the upcoming season, and I made a move in case interest would be lost. It wasn't until LSU faded fast and hard in the beginning of the SWU season that I started second guessing my decision. My close advisors were telling me, don't go to LSU. Akeem Young hasn't been the same since high school. And I ignored them, of course, just keeping an eye out for their games and watching the box scores, only to be embarrassed when Iowa blew them out by 43 points in their second game. My friends and family were harping on me, decommit, decommit. And I tried to stay loyal, but it was such a bad skid to the point that they switched their defense from man to man to a 2-3 zone, and it still didn't majorly help. Now, at that point, I hadn't heard from any of their coaches directly either about the plans that they were making to change that. Granted, I was only just a verbal commit at the time, but I believe some reassurance was needed with all that was going on. Schools were still sending me offers to my surprise, and it was several of them that caught my eye. Kentucky, UCLA, Alabama, Duke, Memphis, San Diego State, and USC, just to name a few of them. It was at that point that I decommitted early, giving LSU the time and opportunity to find their next man while I pursued my best interests. But I still wish them the best, and I hope that they can bring in someone like Tyree Wells.
Interesting, interesting. That makes a lot of sense if when you have so many people telling you to do things a certain way, that's very telling about your journey and the importance of the people close to you. But who are your favorite players to watch across SimWorld U, and what does it kind of mean to you to soon have the opportunity to play not only with these guys but against them night in and night out?
My favorite players to watch when I get a chance to across SimWorld U are Suno Chapa on Oklahoma and soon to be Carson Cutbirth from Gulf Coast Lockdown, Jamison Johnson from Kentucky, Bevinson Patches on Auburn, Corey Yams on Arizona, Coco Bryce on Alabama, Ethan Letterman Jr. on Creighton, Adam Mahmood on Georgia Tech, Deontay Joyce on Memphis, KPJ on UNC, and CKC on Maryland. Now, I will admit, I've watched countless of hours of film on these guys since before I joined SimWorld Prep. And as I was competing against the majority of them last year, I feel like I know their game. It's just going to be so exciting getting that opportunity to show what I can do at the next level. There's going to be a lot of competition, and I'm doing all I can to train for it.
I love that you always got that chip on your shoulder, that killer instinct. It's great to see. But with you in your final season of SimWorld Prep Basketball, how are you preparing yourself for the difference in talent between SimWorld Prep and SimWorld E Basketball?
When it comes to preparing myself for the difference in talent between SimWorld Prep and SimWorld U, I have been working on establishing an identity as a role player. Now, Coach Heesh acknowledges this. I've had a lot of talks with him regarding the new talent that we have. All of these guys at Gulf Coast Lockdown are ballers for the squad, and the stakes are even higher with tournament play being reintroduced. There will be a time for me to get the shots that I believe I need, but we also have to win our games right now. And I see SimWorld U as being no different. You can't just have one person putting up shots and carrying the workload because you become one dimensional and teams can beat you easily that way. It's always about the brothers, and you've got to keep your unit together. Spread the love. You feel me? That's where my focus and mentality is right now when I'm fitting into a SWU school system.
Gotta respect the mentality. I always have, always will. But final question I have for you, Kai. When do you think you'll commit by? And do you have a desire to stay in the South? I heard Arthur Lattimore's comments about wanting you at the University of Texas, and I know you guys are pretty good friends.
Although I have a desire to stay in the South, I'm not limiting myself to a few college options. There's a lot of teams in play that I am making considerations for, and it won't take until 2025 to do it. Best believe that.
Thank you, Kai. I appreciate you stepping in for joining the show today. It's great to have you on as always. If I'd be more than happy to you're more than welcome to return to the show whenever you'd like. But that's gonna do it for this episode of the J Rock Show. I am your host, Jason J.K. Candell. Remember, SimWorld Hoops, the only place you can see the game and be the game, and tune into some great action this week and next week. See y'all soon.